All right. Go ahead, Erin.
All right, so we're taking a look at the ABCs of effective virtual teaching. We kind of took our experiences and our resources and we compiled them into a list that we sorted alphabetically, so that when you leave today, you have all these resources to put into your teaching toolbox.
So hi, I'm Caroline Fish, and I'm going to be graduating from the Inclusive Childhood Education Program. I'm currently a 4th grade teacher at Rush Henrietta, and my email information is below if you would like to email me with any questions.
I'm Erin Ormsby. I'm graduating from the TESOL program. Right now, I teach Spanish for grades 6 through 8 at PEALDECK Middle School, and my contact information is on the screen.
And I'm Karen Lanzafame. I'm also graduating from the Inclusive Childhood Program. I am currently an art teacher in East Irondequoit for grades 3 through 5. And you also have my contact information.
So to start off today, we are going to share some advice that we have for teaching online. Our first piece of advice is less is more. While planning, it's important to think about this saying, less is more. We found that there's a lot of resources available while teaching online, and this can be overwhelming for you as a teacher while you're planning, and it can also be overwhelming for students and families. So it's important to not post too much for families and students to complete and figure out, and it's important to stay organized and have clear and concise lessons. We have found it helpful to create routines for students and families, and some of these routines can include how you're posting work for students, how you're providing feedback, keeping consistent times for class meetings and office hours. And this spring, I had the opportunity to teach online, and some of the routines that I used was each day I posted an interactive notebook for my students to complete on Google Classroom. And I kept this notebook the same every day so the students and families knew what to expect. And I kept the class meetings we had on Mondays at 12, and each day I had office hours at 12 also, and I found that having this routine made it easier for families and students with their learning, and also it made it easier for me while planning.
When you are thinking about what technology you're going to use, it's really important to put the students first and to make sure that you're using tools that students know how to use and that they are able to use with what they have at home. It can be easy to get caught up in the really interesting and flashy and impressive resources, but if students can't use them or don't know how to use them, that's not going to really help your instruction. It's also important to spend time teaching students how to use those technology tools. Our students can be really adept at technology, but that doesn't always mean that they know how to do everything. So it's good to take that time to make sure that you show them what to do and what you expect. And then, like Caroline said, less is more. It's good to think about the purpose for each tool that you're using. So if you're just adding in tools and resources and all kinds of cool things, it can look exciting, but if you reach the point where you've added too much, it gets confusing and it takes away from what you're really trying to teach.
We also wanted to take a minute to talk about our collaboration. I think working in this team of 3 was new for each of us with the online learning. So we put together a little bit just about what that was like for us. We thought one of the most important things for us was communication and finding the time to meet with each other. We spent a lot of time texting back and forth, emailing back and forth. We had documents open at the same time just to make sure that we were all on the same page. And we found that we were able to alternate how we worked collaboratively as well as independently. And we scheduled lots and lots of check-ins to make sure that we were doing what we had expected. We also found a lot of benefits of collaborating. We each brought different strengths to the table, which was really awesome for our planning. We found that we learned new things from each other and that we had ways to differentiate that we couldn't do on our own in the classroom. We also practiced different team teaching models, parallel teaching, alternative teaching, teaching in stations where we each brought those strengths back together for our students. And we included a QR code and a link to our classroom website if you wanted to check that out, just to see our final collaboration, how it actually looked.
All right, and this is the portion of the presentation where we have our ABCs of virtual teaching. We've got strategies, we've got resources, lots of links and QR codes that you can come back to. And we've split these resources into some categories. And we've used these symbols to show you which ones you can use the resources for. Some of them are helpful for planning, some are for inclusive practices or delivering content or collaboration. So those symbols are what will tell you what you can use these resources for. So A, we have the asynchronous instruction model. This is instruction without specific meeting times. You're not like meeting at the same time every day, and students are working at their own pace toward deadlines. This is what my district used this year for our middle school students. And I have an example here of what that looked like on Schoology. So each week by Sunday evening, we would all post our lessons. And so when students logged in, they just saw their week of lessons and could work at their own pace. This helped us make our instruction accessible to students whose schedules might not be 100% clear. For example, students who are taking care of younger siblings, or students who share their devices and might not be able to log on at a certain time. This helped them to access content at a pace that worked for them.
B stands for the Bitmoji craze. Bitmoji is something that I am a huge advocate for. My students know how much I love my Bitmoji. It's all over my physical classroom. So I thought it would be a great way to make them feel sort of at home in the classroom, but online. So I've included here on the Bitmoji logo, you can click and go to the Bitmoji site if you don't have one created already. I've also joined this Bitmoji Facebook group, which is a fantastic group of educators that are all basically giving each other free things for creating these Bitmoji scenes, troubleshooting things, and sharing out really great resources. And I also have this Bitmoji how-to page that actually comes from the Facebook group, just to get you started with this technique of bringing that Bitmoji into the virtual classroom.
Creating choice boards is one way you can give students choice in their learning. This is a great inclusive practice that you can use to include students' interests along with their mode of learning. And in an online setting, you can create different links that students can click on and complete activities online. I have an example of a choice board I made for my math block plans. And in the choice board, you can see that students have different opportunities that they can complete that was based on our concept of place value. And it could allow students to reinforce that concept along with challenging their thinking. And two resources that we found that you can use for differentiating instruction and meeting diverse learner needs is Google Classroom along with QR code. So for Google Classroom, you can assign assignments to specific students. It's really easy. Instead of hitting all students, you will select the students that you would want the assignment to go to. I also included a video that walks you through each step on how you can assign to specific students. And with QR code, you can create different assignments and then post them using QR code. And this allows you to differentiate instruction without students knowing that there are different assignments. You could give students the choice of what QR code you wanted them to complete, or you could assign specific QR code to students. And it's really easy to make a QR code. I actually hyperlinked the website on the blue picture at the top of the screen. So if you click there, it will take you to QR code generator website, and all you have to do is copy it and paste your link into that website, and it will make you a QR code that you can then download and copy and paste into your file.
Edpuzzle is a website that I really like using when I'm making content for my lessons. It's a website where you can create classes and give students a join code, so it's just your students who see it. And you assign video assignments. You can upload your own videos, or you can choose videos from YouTube. And it doesn't just have students watch the videos. You as the teacher can also add pausing points throughout the video to add questions or notes for your students. So for example, on the upper right-hand side here, I have an example of a video lesson I did where I stopped with a multiple choice question to pre-assess student knowledge. And down below, I had the video pause with a note to remind students to add information into their notes. Something I really like about this website is that it gives unlimited wait time. It doesn't rush students through the questions, so that's really useful for having students work at their own pace.
Flipgrid is a website where you can post learning activities for students to respond to with a video recording. And this is an inclusive practice you can include in your lessons. For some of my lessons, I gave students the choice if they wanted to respond with words or if they wanted to use Flipgrid and respond by making a video recording. Flipgrid also has a text-to-speech feature that students can use to listen to the teacher's directions or the question that the teacher posted on Flipgrid. Flipgrid also allows teachers to give students permission to watch their classmates' videos that they post, and it also allows teachers to respond to students with writing a comment, or they could respond with a video back to students. And this spring, my students really enjoyed creating Flipgrid videos. They can include filters along with emojis and stickers, which they had fun using. And they also enjoyed watching their classmates' videos, especially when we weren't in school. It was nice to see and hear each other in an online setting. I included the QR code with the Flipgrid website, along with some videos that walk you through how to use Flipgrid as a teacher and also how to use Flipgrid from the student's point of view. Google Drive has many resources you can use for instruction. So to start off, there's Google Slides, which you can use to create interactive notebooks, along with presentations that you could use during class lessons. I provided a QR example of an interactive notebook I created for this class. It's at the bottom if you would like to check it out. Also, Google Docs is a great way for students to complete their work. It has a great feature that teachers and students can use where you can comment on the Google Docs and teachers can provide feedback to students, and you can also teach students how to use the comment feature that they can ask questions while they're completing their work online and you could respond to them. Also, in Google Drive, you can create Google Forms, which could be used for exit tickets, check-ins, or surveys. I have an example of a social emotional check-in with the different emojis, along with an example that I created the whole social emotional check-in if you want to check it out with the QR code. Glogster is a website that students and teachers can use to create multimedia posters. This is another great inclusive practice that students can use if they want to use pictures, videos, or words to represent their thoughts.
Next, we're going to talk about hyperlinks and hyperdocs. One thing that we found really useful in the online world of teaching is knowing that shortcut for hyperlinks. So we put in the shortcut, which is Control K or Command K. I also found a great article with Do You Hyperlink Your Teaching that goes over just how to hyperlink, where to put the hyperlinks, and different ways to use that. And I also took a screenshot of our schedule on our collaborative classroom. It's really nice when you can make those hyperlinks simple for students to click on instead of seeing all those different words and symbols, just a simple click here, so they know exactly what they need to do and exactly where they need to go. Also, hyperdocs is provided by Google, where teachers can choose the web tools that their students are engaging with. I have included down here just a link to hyperdocs, as well as some samples that are already created on the hyperdocs website for elementary students. So this is a great resource to check out if you have a second and are interested in those hyperdocs.
Instagram is a resource that I imagine a lot of us are familiar with, but as teachers, there are a few different ways that we can use Instagram professionally. One way is to help us become better educators. There are a lot of teachers out there on Instagram who share their ideas, they share their successes, and that can give you ideas for your own classroom. For example, over here on the left, I have a picture of a Spanish teacher that I follow on Instagram. And this was a speaking activity that she created and that I ended up implementing in my own classroom. You can also use Instagram in a professional sense for students and families. Of course, not your own personal Instagram, but if you made a teacher Instagram, some people use those to share updates and spark conversations with the community. For example, on the right, I have a picture of a band teacher's Instagram that she used to get her students excited about a digital talent show. Of course, it's important to have that professional distance. You don't follow students back. You don't use your own personal account. You make a separate one that's just for teaching. But that can be a good way when you're not there in the classroom to still create that sense of community.
Jamboard is part of the Google suite that I actually learned about in this course from one of my peers. I really like that it's this digital whiteboard where students can collaborate and work together. They also can drop images and notes in real time. So this is one of my teacher examples, but all of these pictures can be uploaded with ease. And there's also these little sticky notes so you can ask questions and they can answer back. It's just another great collaboration tool and an inclusive resource really where students can get out what's on their mind on this whiteboard space.
Kahoot is an engaging game that students can play with their classmates and teacher. Teachers can create their own questions, or they can use some of the games and questions that are already on the Kahoot website. And teachers could use the students' answers to the questions as an informal assessment. The one difficult part I found about using Kahoot online is depending on what technology resources students have available, they may have to have multiple tabs open to go back and forth between your class meeting and the Kahoot game. I taught my 4th grade students how to split their screen with 2 tabs. That was very helpful for them while playing the game. Loom is a website that you can use to record videos. You have a few options for how you want to record. You can record using the camera so students would see your face. You can record your computer screen, or there's the option where you can record your computer screen and use the camera so students can see both your screen and your face. This is actually my favorite option that I used a lot while giving directions, using it for read alouds, and along with mini lessons. I uploaded a video that explains how you can add Loom as a Chrome extension on your computer, and he also explains how you can use Loom once you have it downloaded.
My school is actually not a Google school, which is definitely rare in this age. We use Microsoft 365. So I spent a lot of time learning the different features of Microsoft and figuring out how to use that instead of using the Google platform that I'm used to. Two things that I found really useful in Microsoft 365 are the class notebook, where you can give students a notebook that has a place for them to do individual note taking and individual assignments that are shared back with just you as the teacher. There's also a section where they can collaborate with their peers, which is great for small group and large group activities. And also there's a content library where you can attach things or put in different resources that you want students to be able to access. I also put down here just a little video about how to use that OneNote class notebook. And it also pairs very well with Teams, which is Microsoft's answer to Zoom, basically, where you can have that online meeting space. But the other thing about Teams that's interesting is that you can take notes in there, share resources, assign different things. Teams is also being used as a platform for educators to meet with each other. So different PLC groups also use Teams to build their lessons. N is for Nearpod and Newsela. Both of these fit into the content and inclusive practices. Nearpod is actually doing a PD camp right now where they're going over how to use Nearpod and the different capabilities of it. In this blue graphic, it shows you all the different things that you can do and the things that you can connect to. It's basically a slides presentation on steroids where you can add polls, you can add a virtual field trip, so you can add questions, formative assessments, students can draw, they can do different reports, they can collaborate with each other. It's a very cool resource. So you should definitely check it out if you haven't heard from it. They've also started partnering with Google and Microsoft to make accessing Nearpod much easier for teachers. Another resource is Newsela. With this, you can pull up different articles on basically any topic. And what it does is it changes the Lexile readings for different students so that they can access the articles at their own level. There's also built-in quizzes and writing prompts, and you can change those to tailor them to your own assessment needs. And they have provided some really cool resources specifically for distance learning that I've linked out on the bottom here, so you can see how to use that in your virtual classroom.
For O, we have office hours. This is not any one specific resource, but it's an approach for you to keep a consistent schedule to support your students. When you're teaching from home, it can be a little difficult to establish those boundaries between your working time and your personal time. And it can get really tempting to want to, respond to emails at all hours of the day, even if it's, 10 p.m. when you're going to bed. So office hours are a good way to help yourself, help your students, while still keeping that consistent schedule. You can set up your office hours a few different ways. You could have large group meetings where you have a Zoom or a Google Hangouts link that students pop in and out of as needed. And then students get a chance to see each other, hear each other's questions, and you can address multiple students at the same time. Or you could set up your office hours to have one-on-one meetings. You might have students email you to sign up for a time slot, or you could use a Google form or a doodle poll, which is at the bottom right-hand side of the page, where you post the available time slots and students sign up for them so that you get to have that more one-on-one FaceTime.
P is for Padlet and PADLET. Padlet is basically a blank wall where students can post answers to questions, have conversations with each other, and I have found 30 ways to use Padlet in the classroom. This is a really neat resource. There's plenty of things on there that I haven't thought of in using Padlet. So check out this one down here, definitely. The other thing that I've linked out to for you is how to teach remotely with Padlet. This is a teacher who uses this all the time, and it's just a really great watch for getting familiar with Padlet. PEALDECK is probably my new favorite teaching tool. I found this as a Google add-on. It's really cool. You can see here I sort of got meta and I put my own screen within the screen, and you can see when I pulled up PEALDECK, it just went right next to the slide that I was working on, and it gave me these options to add in some different interactive features for my students. It's really great for that formative assessment. It's also great for making sure that students are with you. Looking at just slides on the screen day in and day out can get pretty boring, and it's easy to check out. But once you add these things in, you're getting them more engaged in their learning. So it's a fantastic tool.
Quizzes and Quizlet are two websites that are pretty similar. Quizzes is a lot like Kahoot. You as the teacher can make multiple choice questions for your students, or there are pre-made sets from other teachers that you can access. When you are using quizzes with your students, you can play it as a live game, similar to Kahoot, or you can assign quizzes sets as homework. This is something I like to do for students because it provides them with immediate feedback. Students work through these questions at their own pace. I have an example of one at the bottom. You can add pictures, you can add math equations, and as soon as a student answers a question, they get feedback, so they get that information straight away. Quizlet is a little bit more vocabulary centered. You can create vocabulary lists, you can use pre-made sets, or students can make Quizlet sets of their own. And the website will generate flashcards, it will make practice tests. Students can play individual games where they play against the clock, or there are live team game options. Those live team games I have not tried as a digital resource because students are placed on teams. There's kind of a communication side to it that might be a little challenging for digital learning, but the other pieces of it, getting students working with the vocabulary, getting them engaged, Quizlet is a really useful resource for that.
Read, Write, Think is a website that teachers can use for planning. It has lesson plans along with interactive activities for students. One really awesome feature on this website is they have graphic organizers that are interactive, so students can type right into the graphic organizer, and this is a great inclusive practice for ESL students along with students that may benefit from using graphic organizers. And I have the QR code at the bottom if you would like to check out the website. Storyworks is another website that provides articles and stories along with lessons and project-based activities that you can include in your instruction. One thing that I really like about Storyworks is that it has a text-to-speech feature that can really support some of your learners. I have the website on the QR code at the bottom along with one of the examples of the Storyworks that I used in my ELA block plans along with my fourth graders this year. Slide Carnival is a website with free Google Slide templates that you can download and use. We actually got our Google Slide template from this website.
So T is for TED-Ed, Tween Tribune, and Twitter, 3 great resources for online teaching. TED-Ed is those short TED-like presentations that we all know, except they take the content and it's geared more towards students. It's something that you really can just go to the search bar and type things in and find great resources that you never even knew existed. TED-Ed also has the feature where it takes students through comprehension checks as well as digging deeper into their learning. So it's a great way to expose students to things in a multimodal sense and also getting in that comprehension check. Tween Tribune is pretty similar to News ELA, except it's brought to us by the Smithsonian. There's great articles on there. You also can change the levels to make it more suitable for your students. And Twitter is something that we all know and love in our private lives, but it does have fantastic applications for our lives as teachers as well. So I have linked out to an article here that is a beginner's guide for how Twitter can be used in the classroom. There's also a great blog that gives you fantastic ideas as well. So Twitter is a great way to stay in touch with families and students. Again, as long as you're careful that you're creating a teacher account and staying professional as well. U is universal design. It's not necessarily a tool. It's something that we all learned about very early in our educational career. But it's important to focus on when we're talking about online learning because it's easy to find yourself making 10 different copies of something just so different students have those different things that they need. But sometimes if you stop and think about it, one change to a lesson can actually benefit everyone that you're teaching. So taking time to really think big picture and make those modifications that really will help everybody, help to sort of streamline your planning process and also ultimately help the students as well. So I've linked out to a couple of videos and resources here if you need a little refresher on universal design.
For V, we have voice memos. This is an app for iPhones and iPads where you can record your voice. It's pretty easy to edit the recordings, to crop something out if you had to cough or a siren went by. And you can share those audio files by emailing them or texting them. I use this all the time. You can use it to make recordings for students who have tests read aloud. And that way they can access that audio recording and just listen to it privately with headphones. You can use this to help you complete running reading records. You can attach files to slides to get that audio input for students with digital learning. And it's also an alternative way for students to create responses. Instead of writing, they could speak it, and this is one app that they can use to complete that. For W, we have Wikipedia, which is not necessarily something we would use for information or research, but you can use it as a language resource. Google Translate is not very reliable, especially when we're looking at a proper noun like Disney World. Google Translate's a robot, so it doesn't really know what you mean. So it takes everything really literally. So here I have an example, Disney World, it tells me Mundo de Disney, but that's all very literal. Wikipedia, on the other hand, is made by people, it's translated by people, so it's more reflective of what people who speak a language would say. So a trick that I've learned if you're working with ELs or if you're teaching a language is to go to that English Wikipedia article, scroll down on the left to where you find the language, and then click on whatever your language is, and it will give you a better idea of how that proper noun translates to another language. So that's a resource for the language users. For X, we don't have a specific resource, but we do want to talk about expectations. Just like when we have class in person, you have to make sure that you are really clear with your expectations. And that can look a little different for digital learning. How do students know when the assignments are due? How do they turn in their assignments? How do they get in touch with you? And it's important not to make assumptions. So we have some examples here of ways that you can communicate and reinforce your expectations. Like, what do you want students to do when they enter a Zoom meeting? How should they write an email? So making sure that just like in any other teaching setting, you're communicating those expectations and you're keeping them consistent. For the letter Y, we have YoTeach. This is a website where teachers can make password-protected chat rooms and discussion boards and polls. So students can respond to questions by writing, they can draw, they can take a picture. And this way students can collaborate with each other, they can see each other's ideas, and they can get some of that interaction through this resource. It's similar to the discussion boards on Moodle, but it is more geared toward younger students. The last one we have, the letter Z, is Zoom, which is not a secret, we know Zoom, but it does have some features that are really useful for the classroom. For example, there's a waiting room where the host has to approve attendees. So if security is a concern, that's a way that you can help make your classroom more secure. You can create breakout rooms where students work with partners or where you can do some small group instruction. There's an option for a digital whiteboard that you as the host could use, or you could invite students and participants to use. And there is an option for automatic transcriptions. So it will transcribe what is said in the meeting to help support students with that audio input, and in case there are students who couldn't make it to that meeting. So some little hidden gems, and I have a website here that can go into those in more detail.
All right, so thank you for taking the time to listen to our advice for online teaching. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us. We're available on email, and we hope that you leave this session with some helpful tricks for teaching virtually.